Hello, everybody. Welcome to our amazing webinar today, Neuron7's Secure Your Seat at the Table, practical real-world advice from service pioneers to share with you about their AI journey and what you need to take into your organizations to determine how you're going to be successful. My name is Brian Bachofner. I lead product marketing here at Neuron7, and I'm joined by two amazing panelists, Rachel and Chandon. Rachel, go ahead and say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me, Brian. I am Rachel Castroverde. I'm the Vice President of Global Services for Terumo BCT, and I lead all post-sales and support functions for our medical devices at Terumo BCT, and I've been in this role since 2022, but with Terumo for a long time, 40 years.
Congratulations. Chandon, over to you.
Hi, my name is Chandon Banerjee. I'm a consultant in the digital excellence and innovation front. I've had 30 years experience in the telecom business in various leadership roles. Last 15 years has been around global services, working on programs like proactive network monitoring, knowledge management, and introducing AI into that realm. And in the past few years, really focusing with the latest technologies in AI and getting to what I'd like to call more proactive AI, which it really sits beside you and helps you with efficiencies and so on. Great to be here.
Thank you. So excited to have you both here today. Before we get into the panelist conversation, I'm going to do a little bit of context setting because there's so much happening in service from day to day. I think it's important just to root us in kind of the core issues that face us as service professionals. I like to say that with every release of a smart device, it's more service challenges for our leaders. Product complexity continues to grow. Thousands of products, configurations, issues, and potential resolutions continue to plague us across our businesses. We continue to see high degrees of turnover, with 46 million people retiring this year. A lot of enterprise knowledge walking out of our organizations that we have to figure out how to replace to ensure consistent service delivery so our customers don't feel it. And then our data continues to be a huge challenge as data, proliferates across our organization and sits in different lakes and places that minimizes or challenges our ability to get a single source of truth for resolutions to make sure that we're able to solve issues correctly and quickly. So that's no surprise that it leads to this huge interest around AI. In Service Council's 2025 State of AI and Service Technology, they have actually seen that 85% of you all, service leaders, plan to invest in AI initiatives in 2025. Not surprisingly, that's up about 23% year over year from the survey they did in 2024. So a huge amount of interest in how we actually take this thing and use it in our business. But leaders continue to see the number one challenge in developing a believable and achievable ROI to be able to justify those investments for the time and the effort that it takes for you to ultimately bring these AI investments into your organization to drive substantial change. So that's really the setup or the context behind what we're going to talk about here. Let's actually dive in and learn from the people that have done this and not from this marketing guy on a screen. So the first area that we're going to focus is real-world service transformation. So Chandon, I'm going to start with you. Can you share a real-world example where AI drove tangible improvements for any of the companies where you've worked? And bonus points if you were able to drive not only operational efficiency, but improved customer experience at the same time.
Sure. So within technical support in global services, we really looked at how can we increase the efficiency internally for our engineers or support engineers, where we had a knowledge base, we had some tools, we had search, but the question was how to increase efficiencies for probably the largest installed base product we had. If you think about it, a minute here and a minute there over tens of thousands of cases add up. So we really focused first internally on the workflow of getting engineers the right answer to help solve those cases. We focused on minors and majors, not the critical ones, and looked at the total time to resolve those cases. Now, with that, to your bonus question, for bonus points, is that as we worked with the internal efficiency use case, we trained the AI to do better, right? And then eventually we said, okay, let's go now to the customer-facing side, now that we understand the goodness of the AI, the accuracy, and we work towards the external use case where really it was beyond self-service. We were looking at customers who decided to push in a case. They didn't want to use auto-suggest, right? I think we're all familiar with a search and auto-suggest. That's asking the customer to do work. So if we could take that friction out, train the AI to say, here's the most probable human-generated knowledge article. And to that, the customer walks away with the answer right away versus our SLA of 180 days, 60 days, whatever, your tier. And we've just saved, X dollars per case because it's been deflected and we can prove it. So that was our certain use case, both internal and external.
That's amazing, right? Focus on driving internal efficiency as well as, ensuring you're hitting those core KPIs around customer experience. That's great. Rachel, let's hear from you. Talk to us about kind of the real world example about how you got started and the business impact for Terumo.
So at Terumo, we're still in proof of concept on AI, and we're looking at same internal efficiency use case. Ours is based on we're in a new market that we didn't have information on how the serviceability, how the market would, the throughput of the device and the usage. And we started feeling the pain pretty quickly on call escalation. 25% of our devices were out of service, with 15% escalated to our team, which is not scalable and sustainable. And this is why we started the use case, the proof of concept to reduce call deflection at Terumo BCT. That is not the only value that we will be bringing into the organization. We're also looking at, we do not have, unlike Chandon, a knowledge base or tribal knowledge format, and this is going to bring a lot of effectiveness throughout our organization at Terumo BCT. So a lot more to learn, but we're on our way.
That's amazing. It's a journey, right?
Yep.
So on to the next topic. I think that builds really well off of kind of where we ended. You're early in your journey. How did you define the low-hanging fruit of where to start, Rachel, when thinking about deploying AI? Was it those KPIs? Was it feedback from customers? Was it things relative to competitive? Like, how did you determine where to start? And what advice would you have for people about kind of how to find the low-hanging fruit?
I think in our case, it was pretty obvious, right? We couldn't manage. It was managing the internal pain without increasing human capital, which is a challenge for everybody in every organization to be able to take on new folks along with scalability. So that's where the low-hanging fruit was for us, is the new market with the call escalation. It was a good business case. I can tell you the first year we were deflecting about 12 FTE headcounts just by utilizing AI. That's what we're anticipating, with other metrics on top of that. So ours was a little bit easier, but we do have opportunities in the other organization on where we can be more.
That's great. And Chandon, I'd love to hear from you about how you talked about the internal and external use cases. Like, how did you balance those to determine where to start first?
I think so. First, going back to how to start, even either, is that I think Rachel used the right word. It's obvious, right? The problem itself is obvious. It's not so much AI. There's a problem that you need to solve, and AI can help. So we started with the fact that we had the biggest product with the biggest install base, most number of cases coming in. So to your question of internal versus external, with that low-hanging fruit, always start with internal. You have control over change management. You have control over the users in the sense that they're your people, and you have control over the experience, which you can correct and improve on without affecting CX, because you haven't exposed the customer to it. And in your ROI, and no matter how you do it, you're probably going to get most bang for the buck with internal efficiencies, at least in my experience. And then once you've done that, the icing on the cake and the improvement to CX explicitly, if you will, is going to the customer through your app or your portal for that digital experience to see how you can now use that AI that you built up for this low-hanging fruit and improve on your ROI numbers.
That's great. It's all about a balance, right? And I appreciate that. Great answers and amazing insight. So think about the business case, right? So we've got these things that we've got to handle, right? We think that AI may be a way to help us with a new product, right? Or emerging KPIs that are moving in the wrong direction, our inability to manage the scale and the complexity of our business, right? So I ultimately need to go to a financial partner, to my CFO, to a VP of finance. I have to work with IT. So Chandon, how do you go about, you had a good framework that you shared, like how do you go about building that business case to be able to kind of pick that up, carry that over to a sponsor to say, this is why we need to invest in AI, and this is the actual payoff or the business benefit that I'm going to deliver if you let me go do this? Like walk the audience through your process there.
Sure, and this is really continuing on the previous answer and our low-hanging fruit. Go big or go home is not the right answer. I think you need to start with a tangible, obvious use case to which the business case has controlled costs. Don't ask for gazillion dollars. Start with the costs of proving out a trial, right? Work with the vendors, and once you choose a vendor, work with the vendor for a trial where you, in your business case, the first step of it, where you say, can we commit to starting a trial? And this is how much money I need. It's not a huge bucket of money. And here's what I promise to deliver through that trial. And with that trial, you want to control it with working with the right partners within your team who are willing to try it out, right? Not everybody right in change management is. So initially you want to go with your friendlies and prove it out through a trial with the budget that you've asked for. And the next steps of it really gets to then going back with hopefully positive results to start expanding on that. And I think we can later discuss that overall roadmap of what you built. But start with that trial, ask for the money and get the approval, and go back with tangibles based on that trial.
That's great. And it's amazing segue back to you, Rachel, because you're kind of in that process, right? You talked about a POC, right? Like, how did you ultimately go to, cross-functional stakeholders to get the justification to even start the POC? And then what are you looking to prove to the business when you're done to be able to say, like, hey, we've done this, now let's go farther together?
Yeah. Excuse me, Brian. We are in there. I did start with the data. What are the business needs, going out to vendors, just like Chandon suggested. Our organization was ripe for AI at a leadership perspective, and that helps a lot. But you still have to bring those executives along with you to say, this is the value that we will bring to the organization long term. I looked at a couple things in my business case. I looked at the estimated escalation call with device placements over a 10-year period and what we can deflect potentially. I wasn't promising the world. I was promising something that was reasonable. I also looked at the cost of human capital to manage that level of workload if we did not do an AI initiative to scale our work efforts with escalation. And I also looked at hey, if we're not troubleshooting spare parts in the field and we can see a reduction in spare parts, we're saving the company money across the board. So those three things based on the cost of the trial were really an easy business case to get buy-in to use it. And now we're in the process of making sure that we meet those goals. I didn't go for the top goal. I went for something that was reasonable that I felt like we can meet. And Neuron7 helped with helping identify what those targets might be. So that's really important for folks that are trying to get started that haven't done it. Like, what are you seeing other businesses do? Talk to some other stakeholders that have actually done AI. It all helps with building your business case when you're trying to move forward with an initiative like this.
That's amazing, right? So real concrete things, using a little bit of fear to say, hey, this is what's standing around the corner if we don't fix these things, right? To get people, you know, it's motivated to say, well, that's not a good outcome for the company. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. And I think another thing that I would share is, you know, one of the things we're seeing a lot in the market, you know, working with companies like yourself across a variety of industries is, you know, there are pools of money available for AI initiatives at companies. Some companies are thinking of building AI committees, right? You know, it's very top of mind, not only for service leaders, but for CEOs, for boards, specifically what organizations are going to deploy around AI. So it's really important to have an approach like Rachel or Chandon's here to make, that's why we talk about securing your seat at the table, right? There are going to be AI initiatives that happen inside of companies. You can either lead those and shape those initiatives around the core KPIs that impact your business, or you can wait and potentially not get a piece of that pie or have something foisted on you that you have to try and adopt that ultimately isn't what you would have chosen, you know, had you been proactive. So I think really important. So I'm going to transition over a little bit. So we talked a little bit about building the business case, right? That's the ideal kind of end state. We all understand our businesses are not perfect, right? We're dealing with a lot of complexity, right? We have data that, you know, exists in a lot of different places. So when you think of your AI journey, are there other things that you should think about first before you start? Or do you just start and try and figure that all out later? Chandon, the question's for you.
I think to the data part of it, you know, there's a spectrum within which, you know, each company falls in, or each area of you know, the organization. If your data, for example, if you yourself can't analyze the data to come to a conclusion based on the use case, then your data probably is not complete enough. If it's not complete enough for you to figure out what's going on, AI isn't going to help you. Beyond that, if you do have good data, but there's lots of it, I think two things. One is start with AI. The AI vendor and the AI algorithms will spit out quite often some anomalies to help you fix things. And of course, I would, you know, think that you also have a continuous improvement program going to improve the data based on how you produce it, you know, the data, whether it be documents or knowledge or what have you. The other thing to talk about is certainly have a good relationship with your IT department. I was fortunate enough in you know, my work with Sienna, we had a great IT partner, great IT SME who helped with the integration process with Neuron7, such that as you move along the journey and the initial steps, you know, the friction is not there because you rely on IT for your IT systems for all of this to happen. And I think you mentioned this just previously, is that if you don't already have one, and by now you should, right, is an IT governance on AI and data. So two things. One is it keeps you safe as far as, you know, you and your vendor venturing in, exposing your data. And number two is if you have a committee that's talking with each other, you can learn from each other on what AI use cases are happening within the company. The bigger the company, the more that's probably happening you don't know about. And of course, what vendors are you using? So I would certainly say, you know, work with your IT organizations for the tactical as well as the strategic piece.
That's great. Thank you so much. And Rachel, does doing this AI thing give you a little bit of a mandate to kind of go clean up your room, kind of relative to some of this data, right? So because you want to make sure it's successful, like what are you doing specifically inside of your organization to kind of get your room in order, clean up your room, and make sure that the AI has access to the best data to ultimately drive the outcomes that you're trying to deliver?
That's a yes and no, Brian. So in some aspects, you know, what is first? Some of the cleanup activities are something that you would not expect. We have a lot of alarm detail things that we know are going on with our devices, et cetera. What we don't have is clarity in the troubleshooting in our service manuals. So some of where we're picking up and learning is, boy, we maybe need to write our manuals a little bit differently to help AI be more proficient with giving us the correct answers, et cetera. So that's one area of opportunity. It will drive us to continually update our data. I think another area for us is our tribal knowledge is non-existent. And I want to capture that just like everybody else in any organization that has had long-term service technicians that have everything embedded in their head that you need to get out of it. And that's part of the journey in terms of what data we're trying to capture along with knowledge. That's knowledge. So yeah, the service data we will be working on. We have a lot of alarm data. It's just what do we put into AI so it can give us the right outputs as we continue to learn in our journey.
That's great. And Chandon, across your career, I was just interested to see if you've got any advice for people about this, collective intelligence or tribal knowledge, about kind of getting that instantiated inside of an org, where you get it out of the seasoned technicians' heads and, into a process that's scalable. Do you have anything to share with the audience there?
Yeah, and number one, big believer in knowledge management, right? Knowledge base, specifically, where you basically write articles that are short and concise that get to the answer for a particular problem. So it's an industry practice, knowledge management. The other thing, to just continue to what Rachel was saying, is that historically we've written a lot of technical documentation or customer documentation in a flat manner. And for human consumption, HTMLing lately, of course, is pretty much coming along, and tagging it, XML tagging it as per how AI can absorb it. Really, the thought process of creating customer documentation now is to make it more usable by AI. So it's a relatively new thinking, whereas I think previously it was more of just let's write it down and put it in a documentation for someone to read.
That's great, right? We've all been in this world of, on these technological journeys over the 20 or 30 plus years that we've all been in service, right? So we've all witnessed the transition from like pen and paper and file cabinets to technology, right? And then now with technology, in this new AI era, taking a bad business process or taking a lack of information and then trying to improve it with technology or AI is ultimately going to result in probably very nominal improvements, right? So, with AI, it's an opportunity. Clean your room relative to data, right? Think about your knowledge management as a discipline inside of your company. Make sure you're making the investments there, right? Don't take outdated processes and try and jam them into kind of AI-driven workflows, but reimagine the customer journey and the customer experiences that you can create, so start with the end in mind and be able to really architect these processes for the future of service, instead of just trying to shoehorn old processes into AI and thinking you're going to get some breakthrough results, right? That's just erroneous thinking, and you're probably going to set yourself up for failure. So that leads into failure, right? Success and failure, right? So when we think about these initiatives, how do you ensure effective change management, right? So I think a part of that, Chandon, I wanted to ask you about vendors, about the data stack, about AI, right? So when you're thinking about that, how do you ultimately make a decision about what to do, who to engage with, and what the technology stack that you need to deploy looks like?
Certainly with AI vendors, when you're about to choose them, the technical capability of the AI algorithm is obvious, right? So you want to do some kind of bake-off to say, okay, vendor 1 versus 2 versus 3, we give them the same test, and who did best or better. So really, that's the first gate. I think that everybody would agree that's the case. But number 2 to that, staying on the technical front, is that the vendor's solution, how seamlessly does it integrate into your workflow? Or is it, an extra step? It's great, but it's an extra step because it's not native to your CRM. So what's the CRM integration, for example, such that it becomes back to that efficiency problem? Every second counts. You want it as a seamless experience. You want the accuracy. Having done that, AI is a journey, right? you're not picking a off-the-shelf software which is static, algorithm. If there's a bug, you fix it. This is AI. It lives and breathes and continues to learn. So the vendor you're working with has to feel, and you have to have a relationship that you feel is a partnership. So as you evaluate the vendors, ask them the questions and go through the process to feel out, are we going to be able to work together for several years so that we can progress the AI into use case 1, 2, 3, and so on. So I would say those are the 3 things I would mention. That's
great. And let's transition over to, so that's the technology side of it, right? Working with the vendors, going through this evaluation process, looking at specialized versus general solutions, and ultimately determining the right mix that you need for your team. But then there's your team. There's the human component to all of this, right? So Rachel, over to you. I want to talk about, because you're in this journey, right? And you're kind of early in it. How are you thinking about change management? How are you thinking about driving adoption, right? Like, how do you take the human component into this AI thing and make sure it actually improves not only the work performance of your team, but like their job satisfaction and the enjoyment that they have working for your company?
Yeah, Brian, at Terumo, what we're doing is we have a roadmap in place of products that will be going into AI. So we're not putting all products into it because every product is a little bit different. So we're taking what we learned. We're learning from proof of concept, and we have built a readiness team for the next 2 products that are going to be utilized. So we have a team member that already understands the functionality, how it works, gathering a global team together that will help us drive the change through the organization and governance around the next product in line. So we're not just sitting and saying, hey, next round, the new product is going to go in, and we have to go through the same activity that they're going through proof of concept. They're doing it now, and they're doing it at the same time, and they're identifying where we need to make data changes, manual changes, where it lives. Do we need to filter through some of that data that's 20 years old, or knowledge articles or tech bulletins that have been around that are no longer? And what else do we need from a partner at the same time? So we actually are asking our partner, Neuron7, to think about some functionality a little bit different in terms of, and this is the partnership and the roadmap with how we're going to utilize the system. So we have a roadmap for 3 years to get products into the pipeline, but we're not waiting for 3 years to start every program.
Sequential process, right? And not a beginning and an end and a beginning and an end, but a lot of parallel processes that can kind of are at different stages, right? But that one can learn from the other. So every time you do it, it becomes easier, faster, with a higher degree of accuracy. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, we're hearing a lot of things in the market. Some companies and people that we're chatting with are using gamification and rewards and other kind of incentives, right? So thinking of total rewards and things for people to really, get behind this, right? Thinking of ways to kind of demystify and make it seem like, hey, you're not here to train AI so we can replace you. This is really a human augmented, right? This is going to help you do your best work. So it's a marketing exercise. It's a positioning exercise. It's a cultural exercise for a lot of organizations to be able to roll this out in a way where people really see the incremental benefit in their careers and their daily work life. And the business gets the benefit of all the, incredible efficiencies that AI is, able to bring to market. That's amazing.
Hey, Brian, from a buy-in perspective, strategically, I asked the largest region in the world to head up some of that because they're the ones that have the biggest service organization. That's going to help me with buy-in across the other regions that are not as big. There's a strategy around who leads some of these projects and why they're leading them.
Absolutely. Being intentional with it, right? And giving people some potential career development to say, like, this is a great thing for you to be able to take this on. And, being the AI guru inside of Terumo is probably something that a lot of people would feel a lot of, kind of worth and reward behind. That's great. So let's transition into you know, you're both at different stages of your AI journey, right? But, you know, probably a lot more mature than a lot of people in the audience and a lot of other service leaders that we talk to. So when I talk about practical advice, right, things that you wish you would have known before you started, and it's funny, Chandon, I was going to ask you a question about creating a clear roadmap with milestones, and then John came in the chat and he's essentially asking the same question. So I'm going to try and, you know, ask it kind of comprehensively both ways, right? So we talked about the pilot, right, as kind of one step in that milestone. But how do you ensure that that pilot isn't just the end of the journey, but ultimately, you know, a significant milestone as part of a larger journey? Is that painting the picture at the beginning? You know, is that continually getting buy-in at each step, right, that we're moving in the right direction? So, you know, educate the audience a little bit about how to think about that entire journey. And beyond the pilot, how do you continue to make sure that you're making progress, you know, towards some eventual outcome?
Sure. And so with that pilot and trial, which, you know, we've asked money for, and we're going to prove that it works, right, based on the metrics and telemetry coming through. Really, that's the first thing, is to say that it works, and you've done all the adjustments, you've done all the change management for that small group. But it's also a confidence builder, both for yourselves internally with the vendor. And at that point where the initial trial has worked, again, you know, you want to do an incremental increase of that trial to a bigger footprint, something that you can manage, because you don't plan to fail, you plan to succeed. But the goal of this is really to drive towards, within reasonable, that, you know, senior management can agree to, general availability of that use case in my specific use for that product. So drive towards general availability, which is really with communication, with training, with awareness, to get everybody globally to be using this solution for that footprint that you started that initial trial with. So that's the first point. The second point I wanted to mention was, and something I experienced was, you know, we were doing it sequentially based on value to the ROI. So we were going to go to product 2, which would be the biggest bang, right, for the buck. But it was a completely different software architecture than the first product. Product 3 was very similar to product 1. So we started product 2 and working with Neuron7, you know, the AI had to kind of do a relearning because this is a completely different product. Meanwhile, we're looking at product 3 saying, you know what, this is just a newer version of product 1. I wonder if Neuron7, if we tried product 3, if Neuron7 would be just like bang, you know, really successful off the first day. And they were. So we had to readjust, and it seems obvious now, but, you know, think of not only ROI value to be able to prove things up, but look at the architectural components of, you know, use case 1 versus 2 versus 3. The AI doesn't know anything about ROI. It knows about the similarities in pattern. It couldn't care less about the ROI. It wants to give you good answers. So in that sense, think about your roadmap and be able to maximize on your ROI and time to ROI by looking at which use cases have what similarities, and get them going in parallel as soon as possible, and then embark on a new, in our case, software architecture product as a different exercise, understanding, you know, it's going to take a bit of time. So I would throw that, you know, aspect into managing your roadmap and expectations as well.
That's great. I mean, I think having the roadmap and looking for those opportunities where you say, okay, well, yeah, sequentially it makes sense, but like, let's look for commonalities in our business and make sure that we solve those first. Because it's easier for us to get fast time to value by going from 1 to 3, you know, versus starting with 2, right? That's amazing. Rachel, practical advice. Like, so again, you're earlier in the journey, but you're still on the journey, right? If you have the foresight of where you are today to talk to Rachel, you know, who was like, what's generative AI? What's ChatGPT? You know, what would you go back in time and tell yourself? You know, what would you make sure that you knew, you know, having all of this insight that you've now learned as part of the journey?
From an organizational perspective, Brian, when I take a look back, we're always Mach 2 with our hair on fire, right? That's how we work. Everybody's under a lot of stress, and I'm looking back, and I didn't take enough time with change management. Getting people on the bus before you start execution is really key, and making sure your folks, your organization structure is in place to make this happen. So, you know, we had an urgent need. We probably could have got folks on the bus better. Executives were, but I'm talking about my team and the additional work and helping them understand how it would help them. I think they're there today, but if I would have gone back, I would have done that differently now and made sure that everybody understood the value that it would bring to their jobs. Because everybody is very concerned about, is my job going away when it comes to AI? No one's going to need me anymore. Everybody's heard that. That is untrue. And so some of that messaging is really beneficial to driving your initiatives ahead. That's what I would do.
That's great. Chandon, same question to you, right? You know, your journey with,
Right.
with Sienna, and now kind of into this next stage of consulting. You're obviously working with a lot of companies. You know, what are you warning them of, or kind of, preconditioning them to before they start this journey?
Well, aside from the what we've talked about as far as business case and roadmap, to echo Rachel, is that the point of communications. So two things. One is the term over communicate. So okay, great. How do we over communicate? Like with the cycles that we have. So in my experience, we never had enough people to communicate enough. But if you focus on communicating as much as possible, which really gets down to the user community, the first level managers, because I'm having plenty of discussions with the senior managers, which so the kind of communications is your team working to provide lunch and learns, right, as regularly as possible in a global sense. Going to those first manager level team meetings to talk about, first of all, what's going on, and repeating it and answering questions, and just doing the rounds. I know physically it's not possible anymore because you have a global team, but you can, Zoom and use your various tools to communicate via digital forms, but do the rounds, carve off time, make sure your team who's running the program understands, because it can get quite tiring, right? You have your technical responsibilities and you have to go, talk to people continuously, but make sure you do as much as you can and feel like you're over communicating, and ask for resources and help through the SMEs. There are, again, friendlies who will say, we'll work with you to help with the communication. So if you can find those friendlies, leverage them as much as possible.
That's great, right? It takes a village, right? It's not a, one person's amazing idea. It, organizationally requires everybody to be on board. That's why I think the roadmap is so important. That's why I think change management is integral. The data and the understanding of, your environment today and where you want to go forward is hugely beneficial in ensuring these investments are a success. Great. I'm going to hand it over to the audience. I want to get everybody else involved. Enough of me asking questions. We did have one that was in the chat that I wanted to ask of everybody. It seems like there is an immense amount of velocity and news around AI week to week, right? We've got, a few weeks ago it was DeepSeek R1. This week it's, OpenAI's reasoning model, right? So you're on these journeys, right? But then this whole market of AI is kind of continually changing while you're kind of, you're on the journey, right? So, Chandon, what advice do you have for folks kind of relative to, kind of staying abreast of the quote unquote AI market, while you're focused on driving, a specific AI initiative through your company?
Right. So a few things, feet on the ground, right? Yeah, you do have, or you're about to embark on your AI journey. And so you don't want to be changing, teams or tools continuously, but you need to know what's coming. Make sure you know which sources you're reading. If you looked, just off the top of my head into LinkedIn. There's generative AI. I subscribe to the MIT technology forum. There are various ones that you can trust, and that provides not only the latest tool, but a synopsis of what, why, and all of that. There are conferences, certainly Service Council, TSIA, that I trust, and where you get not only technology, but you get use cases, right? So as to, okay, this sounds like a snazzy tool, but I want to hear how Company X actually did this. So if you can't go to the conferences, try to read up on what happened at the conferences, at the seminars. But I think it's a good investment. I learned a long time ago, someone saying, if you go to a conference and you're trying to explain to senior management, is it worth it? If you can take back one idea and implement it, you can pay for the conference cost and the flight costs and the hotel costs over, you put it in your business case for a 3-year period. But that's key as well. It's one thing to read, but it's one thing to be face-to-face and with people who've implemented it and ask them questions. So those quickly would be some of my suggestions.
And Rachel, you had a much more concise answer to this question. So why don't you share what that was? How do you stay on top of all this IT stuff inside of Terumo?
I partner with my digital transformation team. We have a lot of AI initiative. This is the first AI initiative for Terumo BCT. So our digital transformation team is determining the strategy for the company long term. So I will continue to partner because I'm going to need more AI and more use cases in different parts of my organization, just not in service.
That's
and if I'm echoing already what I said, though, is that IT governance I talked about, certainly at Sienna, what I experienced was a global organization, various, from HR to finance to IT, all talking about their use cases, R&D. And so sharing of that within, internally within the company, as you're saying, Rachel, is a good start as well, if you can't go to a conference, for sure. Yeah.
That's amazing. Right. So I think there's a lot of different places to go, to stay on top of it, either to educate yourself or, again, just to make sure that you have a dialogue with your business partners across technology and even across other lines of business to see where they are on their AI journey, kind of what they're seeing from it and how you can, think about instantiating that into your service process. It's hugely beneficial, right? It's on you all as service leaders to be proactive and to be top of mind about this. Because there's such a great opportunity for you to drive transformation, grab a piece of budget, and ultimately, deliver the outcomes that you're all responsible for. So with that, we're going to wrap up. I have one takeaway. So here at Neuron7, we love doing this in webinar format. We love doing this at events and, special places like Service Council and field service events and things of that nature. But we also do it for people on a one-to-one basis, right? So if anybody on the call here today wants to do a deeper dive with one of our folks relative to some of the topics we talked about today about building your AI for service roadmap, just head on over to Neuron7/strategy session, and we can actually create, a bespoke opportunity where we learn more about your business and make some recommendations relative to not just selling you software, but ultimately setting you on the right track relative to ensuring you're making, the right decisions and making the right AI investments for your business. So with that, I will say thank you. Thank you, Chandon. Thank you, Rachel. Thank to everybody for attending today. It was a great dialogue. Thank you for the interaction in the chat, and we will say goodbye.